So our objectives. You want to gain insight into financial acumen and why it's important. I'm going to talk a lot about this, why knowing this information is important. It's not only important to salespeople, but also to marketing people. You should gain a lot of insight into this. You may not need all the skill sets, but certainly you'll understand why it's important, and that's kind of the important point. We want you to learn to use something called actionable intelligence. And I'll talk a lot about this. This is an area where by being able to look at a financial statement, read a 10K, look at an annual report, read an article in Wall Street Journal. I read one this morning that's relevant to what we're doing today. I brought it with me. So I want to show you how you can find actionable intelligence. Being part of the bigger conversation. This is in capital letters, obviously, for a reason. Most decisions by the people you sell to are typically committees. Everybody agree with that? Anybody not agree with that? So when a company puts a committee together, just like when you hired me, by the way, you put a committee together, and on that committee are people from different disciplines, right? Different parts of the organization. Inevitably, there's a financial buyer involved. True? So when you're standing here like I am in front of 20 people on a committee or 5 people on a committee, and a financial buyer asks you about, what do you think this is going to do to my PP&E? Or how does this affect working capital? Or is this a COGS thing or an SG&A thing? If you're not part of that conversation, you're not part of that conversation. Even if that conversation is going on over here and you're over here, it could be like a foreign language to you. So understanding the key terms, understanding the language of the C-suite, and if you didn't get anything from my book, you should have figured out that I've started to take what's your value proposition and how do you connect it to the financial health of a company. And that's what this is about. It's about being part of that bigger conversation. It's also about initiating that bigger conversation, right? How many salespeople walk into a financial buyer's office and say, hey, I can help you reduce your overhead. I can help you reduce your SG&A. I know SG&A is 9% of your revenue. Let's try to get that down to 8 because you know the industry is 7. That is actionable intelligence. That is knowledge that your competitors don't have. They don't even know what it means. So that's why this is important, being part of that conversation. Learn to connect your value to the financial health of the prospect. I spend a chapter on this. Right? And we're going to do it for you. So we're going to all do it together. So you should learn it, hopefully. Converse in the language of the C-suite. Goes back to the bigger conversation. Begin to align your prospects' business initiatives with your solutions. We're going to do that tomorrow. So once we really define what comes up in every deal that you're involved in, all the issues, pains, and goals that your prospects are facing, we're going to then connect those back to the financial health of the organization. Where does it impact our financial health? We're also going to talk a little bit about benchmarks and how to move a deal forward. These are new techniques to you, right? Well, to many of you. Some of you already may be using these, but we're going to talk a little bit about benchmarks. So here's our agenda. Today, we're going to spend all on foundation. We're going to establish a foundation for financial acumen. We're going to establish a foundation for Synchron value proposition. That's today. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the art. Accounting is an art. It's not a science. It's not really all that predictable when you think about it. You see, accountants, what they do is they try to align a revenue with an expense when it occurs. So let's say it's a SaaS model. That's easy, right? You collect revenue every month, so you can take it every month. What if you sell an on-prem system for $1 million and you deliver it in 6 months? When do you take that revenue? How can I move it forward or backward? You see, accountants have figured out how to do that. How do I take an expense and move it forward or backward to make my company look more profitable? How do I write off something really big? Take the hit one time in one quarter so I don't have to deal with it at the end of the year. So there are things in these financials that you can find that are actionable. Did you notice, and I'll show you in the Wall Street Journal, that GM sold their whole European operation? What are they going to do with the money? Right? You know, we're going to work on GM today. Actually, that's going to be part of your exercises. And you'll notice some really weird things about GM. And when you read and you look at this, you'll go, now I see why they sold their European operation. They were losing their butt. $20 billion over 10 years they lost, or $15 billion over 10 years. So they were losing a lot of money. And you can see in their working capital. So you'll be able to look at this and go, oh, I get it. It makes sense. So you're not reading like you're reading it from a foreign paper. But they can be having conversations in Spanish and you're sitting there going, wah, 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 wah. I have no idea what they're saying. So this is the same thing. They're talking a language you need to learn. Then we're going to talk about the analysis. And these are great techniques that you could use to try to move a deal forward, to get a prospect off the dime, to really understand where the buyer is, even to understand if they're a buyer. You know, if you think about it, if they can't afford you, they're not going to buy you. And it'd be nice to know that 6 months before you spend 6 months trying to get a deal. And then finally, the big picture, and this is all about moving that sale forward, and then you guys in your little teams that we just set up get to do a presentation together.